So that's when you can really start to open up through your manoeuvres.
Welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast. We interview the world's best surfers and the people behind them to provide you with education and inspiration to surf better.
Isolating a specific element in your surfing and working on it.
Today's podcast, I'm interviewing Matt Scorringe. Matt is an ex-pro surfer as well as an ex-sponsored free surfer. Matt represented New Zealand in the International Surfing Association World Junior titles multiple years. He went on to compete in the World Under 20 Pro Juniors. He travelled with the Billabong team. Matt received coaching from Oki and Luke Egan. Matt has also done a lot of work with Josh Kerr in 2009 in particular. And Matt is now currently running the Art of Surfing, which is a surf coaching service in New Zealand. Matt, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
No worries.
So first of all, I wanted to ask you, I love the name of your business, the Art of Surfing, because often people think of surfing as just a sport. But could you expand more on why you went with the Art of Surfing?
Yeah, sure. When I was basically in the development stage of what I wanted to do with my surf coaching and my business in general, I actually got quite hung up on what the name was going to be. It was something I thought was really important for two reasons. I wanted it to be a name obviously people liked, that kids would want to wear the t-shirts that they got on the camps and so on. So, but at the same time, I also wanted to basically in a short sentence represent and explain what I'm doing. So when I did think of the Art of Surfing, I mean, obviously it's no secret there are a lot of the art ofs out there in different sports or different genres of things. So I'm not saying I invented that term, but I just felt that surfing of all sports is a real art. It's not black and white like, let's say, golf or tennis or the ball goes out and the line beeps. It's such a, I guess, interpreted sport by how people judge you and also the technique. What is correct technique and what is the best way to surf? So I think everyone can interpret it in their own way, and that's also aligned with my coaching theories. Like I like to obviously give my input to my clients, but at the same time, I like them to get coaching from other people because, I don't think any one person necessarily has all the right answers. So, yeah, back to the name, I just felt it really crossed over a lot of areas, in regards to what I was trying to achieve. And on top of all that, it sounded cool. So, well, to me, it sounded cool. So I went with it. And, I have had a lot of positive feedback around that. So it's been a winner, I think.
Yeah, it's a great name. Sometimes we forget that surfing is an art. I almost consider it a fine art as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's it's one of those things that, and I think, like I kind of repeated myself, but you just look at the international tour and judges, and it's so subjective. Just Sousa beats Mick here or vice versa, and you're going to get a couple of nations up and roar about it, but it's kind of cool in the same way that it isn't black and white, and that's art in general. It's some people like certain art, some people don't. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah. When did you personally first receive a coaching session?
I was fairly late into coaching. A lot of my peers were getting coaching in Australia, that was similar age. Me being from New Zealand, there wasn't any quality coaching in New Zealand at all. And then even some of my New Zealand competitors started travelling to Aussie to get coaching. So I was quite late on the scene. And you mentioned earlier in my bio, my first coaching was actually the Billabong camps. And it was the likes of Oki and Luke Egan and the like, just giving their 2 cents on it, which obviously was quite quality 2 cents. But I guess you'd say they weren't coaches. They were just ex-pros giving, good feedback and good advice and from their experience and their training. And that was my first time that I was in an environment where I saw the benefits of coaching. I was alongside guys like Ace Buchan and B. Durbridge and some of those guys that ended up making it to the tour, and when we did some certain pressure drills and so on, those guys flourished and the rest of us failed. So it was, it was quite clear to see they'd been training like that for a long time already, and I was new to it, and basically didn't have that competitive nous that they did, around not having trained as much in that environment. So yeah, I really saw the benefit of it, and that's probably where it kicked off for me.
And if you can cast your mind back when you were younger and you were 100% focused on your surfing, what are some tips and strategies that really helped you progress your own surfing?
For me, from a personal point of view, when it goes to technique, it was speed. That was something that, I think in general, and I'm currently working with the New Zealand kids here, coach the New Zealand World Junior team. So I think speed in general from a New Zealand point of view is massive, because our waves are a lot different to Australia and some of the other countries in regards to the speed that they break, the way they break, how steep they are. We have a lot of point breaks and sort of river mouths, and they're kind of more bowling, sort of J-Bay-like waves. And we don't have your snapper rocks or D-bars. And I think speed for a New Zealander is crucial. We generally are slower, and it's something we need to focus on. And that was a massive thing for me. That was probably the first thing that guys like Luke and Oki pointed out. You need to work on your speed. You're just going to get left behind unless you catch up. So, yeah, that was the key for me.
Okay. Any strategies you can think of that helped you increase your speed?
Yeah, so in terms of strategies and technique, I'll never forget one of the first things they said was just to get up and race to the end of the wave. I'd never, ever thought to try and do that. I was always trying to do everything at once. And it was about isolating a specific element in your surfing and working on it. They sent me out there, and basically I had to get 2 forehand and 2 backhand waves where I just raced from start to finish. Regardless of how good the wave was, don't try any turns. They were able to come in, and it was before video analysis was sort of a thing. So they just gave me their verbal feedback and of what they saw. But yeah, they were able to break down certain things I wasn't doing to generate or maximize my speed. And yeah, so that I think opened my eyes to the fact of isolating an area to work on, maybe for a whole surf or even a week or a month, let alone just going out there and trying to surf good on every wave all round.
How did you integrate that new speed into your repertoire?
Yeah, it took a while, even getting away from maybe me personally now, for me personally it took a while, and I do think it takes a while for a lot of kids in general, any surfer, whether recreational, young or old. It can take a while to build speed in particular into your surfing, because if you kind of look at it like a fast twitch fibre point of view, some people have it, some people don't. Body type's very much a part of it, weight. So anyway, the point is, for bring it back to myself, it did take a while, and when I finally increased the speed, it was about trying to just do those subtle 10% things that increase it within your combination of maneuvers. And for me, I found it very, very hard. And I'd be safe to say I never quite mastered it, to be fair. So it's an ongoing thing I still work on today, is trying to make sure I'm surfing as fast as I can. And when I work with specific clients and see that they need to work on speed, it reminds me how important it is.
Yeah. Is speed a weakness you see in a lot of the people you coach?
Yes, it is. Obviously, it's not the only thing, and I know it might sound like I'm getting caught up just on speed, but I personally believe it's a very, very, very important element to your surfing. I mean, you just got to look at Mick Fanning and Felipe Toledo and the guys that are right at the top of their game. They are fast. And yes, you got guys like Joel who might look laboured, a little bit more laboured in his approach because he's focusing on style more, but he's still, if you put a timepiece on him and measure his speed, he's going very fast as well. I think the fastest surfers in general are the best, and I'm not saying that's across the board, of course, but I think that they generally get the nod because it just makes everything look so much more wow factor. If there's equal amounts of spray being pushed and flare, but someone's doing it faster, that's where I believe the nod gets given. And through working with a lot of the World Junior campaigns, you travel, and I think there's something like 34 nations now at the World Juniors. So the top 5 countries, France, Japan, Australia, America, Hawaii, basically the difference between them and the rest when they're getting all the way through the finals, it's their speed. They're getting 2 turns in where some other kids are only getting 1. So, yeah, it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the first thing you notice when you're out in the water and there's a pro in the water. You just, wow, they're just surfing literally twice as fast as anyone else.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to watch. Yeah, sometimes we don't realize it when we're watching surfing videos. It's only when we see them in real life we realize how fast they are actually going.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great point. You know, a lot of the kids here in New Zealand don't get to see pro surfers in real life, so they don't know how fast you need to surf, and that's why we really encourage them to get to the Goldie, because you know you're going to see half the top, you know, tour surfers there, surfers that were on tour or might soon be on tour, you know, and I think that's the benefit of certain hotspots around the world where we do see a lot of pros coming from. The kids get to witness it firsthand in the water, and they follow, you know, and suit based on what they see as possible. And here in New Zealand, it's, you know, we just don't have as many quality surfers. We have a few, but the numbers aren't as high. So yeah, the videos don't quite show how fast they're going, as you say.
Okay, so as a strategy for our listeners, do you think going out for maybe a few surfs or even a whole week and just focusing on just racing and seeing how fast you can go on every wave, you think that's a good strategy? Yeah,
I do. I think, like, obviously it's pretty hard to maybe spend a whole surf just racing. You're gonna go, I didn't enjoy that much, because you want to do turns. So what I try and say to my clients is, if you spend a certain amount of time per surf, so it might be your first 20 minutes or half an hour, and maybe even finish the surf with another 20 minutes where you go back to that isolated, you know, whether it be generation of speed. Another area and another way, I should say, or strategy to work on your speed is your pop-up and what I call your first lift and throw. So how you get to your feet and extend and throw your arms forward. I literally have just finished a coaching session today with a bunch of kids, the high performance group here in Mount Monganui, and that was the target. It was only 2 foot, very soft and hard conditions, and predominantly a girls group. So that's quite a key area for a lot of female surfers, is just exaggerating and putting that effort into that pop up and that first, what I call energization.
Yeah.
And if you really break down guys like Philippe and Mick, I'll keep going back to them. They exaggerate it more than any other surfer on tour. That's why they're the fastest. They put that extra 10, 20% in, even right there in there, how quickly they're trying to get to their feet, and just extending up through the torso and lifting their arms in the direction they want to go. So again, you could maybe just work on that for half an hour. Well, let's say focus on that, and then still try your turns after it, but you're really focusing on that pop-up and lift and throw for, let's say, half an hour of, you know, every second surf of a week or something, and you will see results.
Okay. Yeah, well, I like that. I'm going to try that. Okay, so not just racing the wave, but actually trying to pop up and do your first movement fast as well. Yeah.
Well, you know, the whole Newton's law of movement momentum is you're going to get momentum and get faster as you go down the line. But if you start with maximum force, you start with the most maximum amount of force that you can, your momentum's going to get to a faster point quicker, if that makes sense. So you can apply that in any sport or any form of activity, and it's no different in surfing.
Okay. Awesome. I'm guessing you coach a lot of self-taught intermediate advanced surfers?
Yep.
What's the most common mistake you see in that group?
Apart
from speed, obviously.
I'll definitely move on from speed. There's a couple. I guess the most common, well, there's two, but I'll one is foot placement, and this, I personally believe if your feet aren't in the right place, no matter what else you're trying to do, it's all going to be quite difficult to get completely right. So, going right back to where your feet are on your board is one of the most common mistakes I see in a generalized intermediate group. And it just really limits rotation through the hips. So if your feet are too close, you get limited hip rotation. And if they're too wide, it's the same effect. And if it's just right, you get the most maximum amount of hip rotation. So that's when you can really start to open up through your maneuvers. And the second thing would just be what I call back arm. So what your back arm is doing through basically any maneuver. But if you were to generalise, let's just say a forehand Rio or carve, generally their back arm is falling behind them, pulling them backwards and off their board, instead of following through and keeping their weight forward and following through towards the beach in the direction that you'd want to be bringing your board if you're doing a Rio or a carve. And that one is, I'd say, in 99% of intermediate surfers, there's a bit of back arm issue. So
foot placement. How do we know? How would you describe the best foot placement?
Yeah, in a generalisation, if you're a shortboard surfer, it would be through the centre point of your fins. So if you were to look at your grip pad and you envisioned where the fins would be, just trying to centralise that foot on the grip pad, and that's a great place to have it through the generation of speed aspect. So when you're trying to race down the line, but as soon as you actually go into a manoeuvre, dropping it right back over the back fin. So generally, if your grip's in the right place, you would just push it into the kicker of the grip, and that would give you maximum turning, potential. And with the front foot, I basically say to the kids or to the clients that if you just envisioned the central point of your board, so from nose to tail, rail to rail, and put a dot and then drew, let's say, a foot width radius around that. So what I do is I actually put the board on the sand, draw a line around the board and remove it, draw their grip pad on the sand, and then draw that circle for them on the sand, and get them to lay there and practice their pop-up so it lands perfectly in that circle. And, some people can do it straight away. Some might take a little bit longer, but that would be, generalisation of where your feet should be.
So a strategy at home surfers could do is practice their pop-ups, working on how accurate their foot placement is.
Yes, definitely. If their pop-up is an issue, practicing on land is the first thing I get them to try. And quite often you'll find that they can't do it properly on land just through not knowing the correct technique. It's not that they're physically incapable, they're just technically doing it wrong, the way that they're trying to pop up. And once you get them to do it on land, using the correct technique, and they still, what I quite often find is they can't even do it on land. So how can you expect them to do it on a small surfboard in the ocean that's moving? So absolutely, if you get them to practice on the yoga mat and get the technique correct, then they're going to be able to apply it in the surf a lot easier.
Yeah, it's that foot-eye coordination or that spatial awareness that we need to develop.
Yeah, exactly. And just the momentum aspect of it. A lot of people pause as they lift and just don't, anybody that's physically capable, if they pause through it, will find it difficult to get the front foot further enough forward. So you'll catch the wax a little bit too early, and the front foot will be a bit, so your stance will be a bit narrow. So, just making sure that the way you're doing it is through the, you're utilizing momentum, and there's no pause or break in the process of that pop up.
Yeah. So the front foot wants to be sort of over the center of the sweet spot of the board. Yep.
Obviously, it's like snowboarding. You've kind of got that angle. I mean, it's different snowboarding. But what I'm saying is, if anyone that hops on a snowboard for the first time and you've got those bindings there, it feels a bit awkward at first, and then once you get going, you realise, that's where my feet need to be. And it's similar with surfing. If someone is at an intermediate level, they might struggle with the angle that the foot needs to be on. Quite often they have their foot a little too straight and not enough on the side-on angle. But you want it basically crossing over the stringer. You don't want your toes or heel too close to either of those rails. You want it quite centred, and then you're going to get the best reaction when you try and put your board on rail.
Yeah. So the front foot at 45 degrees?
Yeah. That's obviously a nice and clear way to put it.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so with the back arm, what's some tips for the average surfer out there to start working on what they're doing with their back arm? Yeah,
so as I said, back arm's quite a common one, and there's a lot of common, analogies around how to make that back arm stay where it should or follow through as it should. But one that I like to use, and I call it spreading your wings. Quite often people have their arms too close to their torso. They don't actually spread their arms out wide as they, let's say, approach the lip for a Rio, or begin to put their board on rail to perform a forehand carve. So I like to say spread your wings and then, hold that position. So if you envisioned you're flying like a bird, and a bird's flying straight and it wants to make a sharp left-hand turn, they don't bring their wings in close. They just twist the wings in the way they want to go, but they still stay wide. If you take that theory into the surfing, let's just stick with a forehand carve. It's probably the easiest way or easiest maneuver to translate that into. If you spread your arms wide as you set your rail and then twist with your torso and follow through with those arms so they stay wide and they basically, you envision you're trying to fly in that direction, you should technically have your arms in the right position. And let's use Mick Fanning as an example. He always has such amazing width with his arms. His wings are very spread, to use that analogy. And yeah, he really, obviously, as we know, has one of the best calves in the game. Yeah, that just ensures that your arms are wide and you're going to follow through. And I see really good results when people understand that analogy. Sometimes it may be a little bit confusing initially, but when I combine that with some visual, modules and show exactly what I mean, I see pretty much instant results with anyone that has, enough of a level to go out there and try and put that into practice.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, I do a lot of work with kids on the skate ramp.
Yes.
And getting them to do it on the skate ramp, and it then makes it much easier for them to do it surfing as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Practicing it when you're skateboarding as well could be a good strategy as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously, land-based training, skateboarding, and the like is a really good way to do it. Similar to the pop-up, if they can't do it on land, how are they going to do it in the water? So you should be able to do it in a controlled environment first, and that technically will make it easier in the ocean. So, yeah, skateboards are great.
Yeah, and one thing that changed my surfing a lot was actually just when I was watching surfing videos, I was watching what the surfers are doing with their arms.
Yes.
Because sometimes we don't realize how much, especially Kelly, man, look at the way Kelly Slater moves his arms. He's, he's fanatically moving his arms all the time. And we don't realize it often because we're so focused on his, his overall performance. But it's a good way to break things down.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, because a lot of people that I encounter, if we want to stick to that intermediate level that we're talking about, they really kind of look at me a bit sideways when I say it's all in your arms. And, everyone thinks surfing's through the legs. That's all they need to think about. Where's my back foot pushing, all that sort of stuff. But as you say, whether you want to use Kelly or I like to use Mick. I think obviously Kelly's super freak, but I just think technically Mick's just so sound. And anyway, if you really look at what they're doing with their arms, I think that's the difference for a lot of surfers.
So you mentioned Mick Fanning. Who's a backhand surfer who you'd think has great technique to watch?
It depends what you're after. I mean, I also really like Julian Wilson. Obviously, he's got that new school flair, but his technique and his foundation is so solid. He's got all of that all-round act. Obviously, I'm talking a lot of natural footers here, so if we want to try and bring in some goofies for goofy footers, Gabriel Medina, guys like Ace Buchan and Matt Wilco and Owen Wright on their backhand, just outstanding. They have that sort of backhand release that a lot of people are wanting to put into their surfing, but they've got that control too, where they can release when they want to and just do a straight up and down if need be. So I think they've got that complete bag of tricks on the backhand for going to goofy footers. I also like Dane Reynolds. I know he's a free surfer, but if you break down his backhand route, it's pretty phenomenal. So
yeah. So we could go surfing. We could race some waves, pop up fast, race some waves, and then we could also try surfing some waves with our arms spread, probably even so much so that it feels a little bit ridiculous at first.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and obviously there's a lot of people out there that maybe listening to this and they've already heard the analogy of the handlebars, which is obviously Martin done in the HPC Centre, and a lot of people use that, and it's a great way to describe it too. It's very simple and makes a lot of sense. And for anyone that's listening and doesn't know what that means, it's just thinking like you're riding a bike and holding the handlebars of a bike. Again, it's going to ensure technically the same thing's happening with your arms as the analogy I like to use where I say spreading your wings. But why I don't like saying riding a bike is because if you look at Mick's arms, they don't really look like they're riding a bike. They're actually a lot wider than that.
Yeah.
And it's a good starting point, the handlebars, because it allows people to understand what you're trying to say. But then I like to move on from that and say spread your wings. As you say, a lot more than you probably think. So
yeah, like you're saying, like with the strategy of the speed, really exaggerate it for some waves,
yes,
and then it's going to integrate into your other surfing. So if you really exaggerate your arm spread, you're going to get an exaggerated feel of what it's like to really use your arms.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that whole leverage aspect. And if you think of swinging an axe or a hammer, if you're holding the hammer too close to the head, and same with the axe, you're not going to get maximum force based on the leverage, and as opposed to holding it right down by the handle. It's the same thing with the arms. If they're spread wide and you're basically swinging it, through that full range of movement, as you go through your rail on that forehand carve, there's going to be more force put into that, as opposed to the arms being closer together. That's the real key element to why those arms do want to be spread wide. It's the leverage you're going to achieve out of it. So first of all, you just want people to make sure the arm's following through and doing what it should do, but then you want to maximize the power or the leverage so that you can do stronger, more powerful turns.
Okay, so when you coach someone to start using their arms more, do they then start using their head and their eyes better as well?
Generally, yes. Obviously, there is exceptions to that, but like if I was to completely show someone what I wanted them to achieve with their back arm, I basically put the head and the eyes in with it, in regards to I kind of maybe look, if this doesn't make sense, you can maybe cut this out of the interview, but I've got a lot of weird analogies with my coaching, but I like them because I think if they do hit home, they really hit home. And one is when you go to those fairs and you got the clown heads that sort of swivel from side to side and you got to throw the ball into their mouth.
Yeah.
So when you're surfing, you just can't do that. Not through every aspect of your surfing, of course, but we're talking the carve here. Where do you want your eyes and your head to look? So I like to explain that basically when your arms are spread and you're going through that carve, the head kind of leads the way, but it's locked. A lot of people, they'll start to look and then they'll look back to their back arm as well. So they're basically their head's going from side to side like those clowns do, and it's not sticking into the direction that it should, and following through, or as you say with the eyes, the head and the eyes basically looking in the direction that you're wanting to go through that through that forehand carve. So yeah, just locking it all up so that it all is working in synergy basically.
Yeah. I imagine if you're surfing with your arms down by your sides like a skateboarder,
yes,
then your head can move around as much as you want, but it's not going to help much.
No.
The arms have got to be there as well to create that twisting and that wind up. I like that analogy. Okay, Matt, so you coach a lot of elite juniors. Tell me what's some of the most common mistakes you see with those guys?
I guess with elite juniors, it's a hard one. I mean, there is an array of differences, but if I was to try and put my finger on one, for me, it would just be a lot of elite juniors, this modern era of surfing that we're in with the high performance stuff, just getting away from the fundamentals. I see them going for basically pushing their turns too much, especially, let's say, a finishing turn on a dumpy section. I like to refer to anyone that will remember the final of the WA comp this year with John and Adrian D'Souza. I don't know how big you want to call it, but it was pretty big, 6 to maybe 8 foot. And John, obviously, as super freak as he is, he kept falling on his finishing turn. And this is not me trying to critique John. I'd never do such a thing. But basically, he was going for big turns and pushing his tail through those turns. And D'Souza was just following the lip line and basically surfing to the conditions and what it was allowing him to do. And he won the final, as most people will know. And some people might criticize that approach, but hey, it won him a world title at the end of the day. And I'm not saying surf safe, I'm saying surf smart. And a lot of the time, kids at an elite level just get a little bit ahead of where they actually are at. Especially, I like to say to them, if you go to work and you've got a toolbox and you're a builder, if you don't have a nail gun, you're going to get your hammer out and bang away all day, aren't you? And so if you're a surfer and you don't have a backflip, don't try and do it in the heat. Just stick to your reverses, or stick to what you've got in that toolbox. And I feel like elite kids get a little bit too ahead of themselves there. They just try a little bit too much sometimes, when guys like Mick, if they, the fundamentals get it done a lot. I still really appreciate what Philippe's doing, and Dane. I absolutely am a big fan of that sort of surfing, but going back to the competition and your percentage game, I think that's where a lot of them get caught out.
Yeah. You can never spend too much time on the basics and the fundamentals.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us a little bit more about how you're working in the Mount Monganui at the moment.
Yep. So I reside in Mount Monganui in New Zealand, and my coaching programs are nationwide and also internationally. I run a few as well. But Mount Monganui, just to give a little bit of a story for those that don't know, is currently the strongest region in New Zealand. It's basically won the New Zealand, what we call scholastics, you might call it nationals in Australia, I think 5 years running. And it would have to be close to having some of the worst surf in the country if you averaged it out on a day-to-day. It can go flat for like 2 months here. So what that's telling me, it's the hub of kids coming through, the effort they're putting in with their training. So yeah, I'm based here because there's a lot of infrastructure around to support high performance coaching. There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of development in this region. So it's just a good place to be based with the art of surfing. And it's very, very central in New Zealand as well, in the North Island. So probably the most central place to get to all of the other destinations that I operate out of for the coaching.
Yep. So if someone was living in the Mount and were interested in getting some coaching, how would they get hold of you?
Yep. So if they just went on to our website, which is theartofsurfing.co.nz, then there's a contacts tab there just to send an email, or there's my personal phone number as well. I have another coach that works for me that is also, he's a top New Zealand professional surfer. And yeah, between the two of us, no one should have a problem booking in a session, a private, or jumping onto a course or camp that's been advertised on the website.
So you've got camps going on as well?
Yeah, I'd say camps is probably the courses, and camps are the number one thing that I operate through the art of surfing. Privates, are a little bit more difficult to arrange based on surf. So what we tend to do is just advertise camps in locations that commonly have good surf, and they fill up quite regularly, and they're just a really good way to get all the whether it's kids or adults or intermediates or advanced, it doesn't matter. Just getting everyone together in a similar age and level to work on they're generally going to work on the same sort of thing. So you see a lot of results that way because everyone's sort of pushing one another.
Yeah. The Mount is currently the best junior team in New Zealand. And then you also look, Kelly Slater's from Florida. And then I recently interviewed Tom Carroll, and he's talking about how learning how to surf really small waves improved every other aspect of his surfing, including big wave surfing.
Yep.
So I would urge anyone out there wanting to get some surf coaching done, just book it. And who cares what the surf is like? You need to be able to surf anything. And if it's small and fat, I think it's a great opportunity for you to learn where to put yourself and how to surf those small waves, where the power and the energy is. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. Obviously, as you just mentioned, the Mount has the strongest junior region at the moment, and they just get out there, whether it's 1 foot rubbish or it's pumping. And I coach other areas. I run academies in another particular area. I won't name it, but they have great surf all the time, and it'll be what would be a pretty good day here at the Mount, and the kids are like, oh, it's not that good, we're not going out. And then they get to the comps, and the comps are in rubbish, and they just get done up by the Mount kids. So, and the same goes for just any recreational surfer that wants to improve their surfing. They here in New Zealand, a lot of them want to do their coaching at Raglan, which most people listening, I'm sure, would have heard of Raglan, because it's a long left-hand point break, pretty much a reverse of J Bay. So they want to show you how good they surf and be able to to get coaching in perfect ways. But as you say, I mean, of course you can give them a lot to work on, but seeing them in rubbish is where their biggest flaws are. So, if they really want to improve their surfing all around, that's they've got to get out there and anything. Just book it, get in there.
Yeah, do it, New Zealand. You owe it to New Zealand surfing, really. If all of the average surfers are surfing better, then the elites are going to surf better. Yeah,
definitely. You just got to look at Australia when just some random guy pulls up in his tradie truck and he hops out and he surfs pretty much, not much worse than, let's say, I don't know, some of the pros on tour. But I won't name any. But there's just so many good surfers in a country like Australia. As I just said, your average tradies could probably win most national comps here in New Zealand. So we have a small portion of elite guys here that I believe can do it. But you're right, if the average level increased, it would definitely push the elite level up as well, which is what needs to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from New Zealand originally. I currently live in Australia on the northern beaches, and here in the northern beaches in Australia, there's such a culture around not just surfing, but actually wanting to improve your surfing and grow your surfing. There's tradies, they're getting coached, they're inquiring about, how do I surf big waves, or what sort of board do I need when it's really small. And when I was in New Zealand, there wasn't so much of that going on.
No, definitely not. And I mean, even with what I'm doing here in the country, like, there was people before me providing coaching, and there's been some other great coaches before me, absolutely. But in regards to a 24/7 service that is available, I would like to think I'm the first person to create such a thing here, an elite program for the kids, an ongoing platform for intermediate and recreational surfers to get coaching, not only in person but online. I have an online coaching program where people can submit footage. So if they are living, too far away or overseas, they can submit their footage and get a video report, which, to be completely honest, is no different than the coaching they're going to get in person, and it cuts out that whole trying to meet up and the time aspect.
Yep.
And it's cheaper, so it's really a win-win. It's just obviously finding someone to film you is sometimes a hard part. But back to your point, sorry. Basically, there is a bit of a stigma in New Zealand around, it's uncool to be coached if you are an adult or recreational surfer. I've had other adults come that have then got a bit of stick from their buddies, but it's all the tall poppy syndrome of New Zealand. Mates going, someone else is getting a bit of coaching just because they generally just want to surf better and enjoy their surfing more. And I don't think there's anything uncool about that. I think it's a bit of a mindset that it is changing here, but I think it just needs to be dropped by people a little bit sooner rather than later, because I know that probably those people that are giving their mates stick want to improve their surfing more than anyone anyway. So it's just about just getting out there and doing it. Everyone's going to have more fun.
That's right. Come on, New Zealand. You've got no excuse.
Yes.
If you're close to the mount, get a one-on-one up in person. If you're not, do some filming and send it to Matt. Use Matt. He's an awesome resource. And, if you want to see a New Zealander or more New Zealanders in the world tour, which I think we deserve to be, then, it's it's the grassroots thing. We all played rugby and we all got coached in rugby. No one blinks an eye at that, but, we've got to utilize Matt here. And if you don't live in the mount, you can just do it online. And I also would say that I've had some surf coaching done myself, and I was always put off by, I want to surf my best in good waves, and that's when you're really going to coach me. But I've done some surf coaching sessions when the waves are really bad and I surfed really bad, and those are the sessions I got the most out of because it really highlighted my main weaknesses. Would you agree, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore. Basically, I'm the same as you. When I have had any coaching, and I associate with other coaches. Some of my good friends are coaches at certain high performance centres around Australia, and it's not even necessarily a coaching session. We're just out surfing, and they'll just give me some feedback, and I love it because I'll be having a pretty rubbish surf, and they'll give me something that just totally changes everything. In the long run, maybe not that particular surf will come right, but I just wouldn't have thought of it for myself, or obviously seen it in my own surfing. And it's in those average rubbish sort of days that that's the gold nuggets can come from. And then your surfing in good waves improves immensely. So definitely got to get out there in the bad stuff too.
Awesome. And if you guys go to Matt's website and go to coaching, go online coaching, he's got some software, I'm guessing it is, where you pause your turn and then you compare it to a pro surfer. It's fascinating.
Yeah, for me personally, visual learning was always, I guess, it made a lot more sense to me. So I like to coach like that. And if you were to submit any footage, I'd basically just match it and what we call split screen comparison it with a module of someone doing the technique correctly, and just pinpoint, slow it down and pause frame and pinpoint those exact moments when I want you to think about, changing something, and obviously on the other side of the screen will be someone showing you exactly how to do that. And yeah, for myself and my experience as a coach, I know it's been the best way to see results in a short period of time. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's just as good as getting coaching in the flesh, because as long as you've got some good footage of yourself, and when I say good, I don't mean you surfing good, I just mean some nice, reasonably clear footage of you even surfing very bad and bad surf. It just allows anyone that's providing such a service to break it down and give you what I call a video report, and you've got it there to keep. You can watch it over and over, and you can't go wrong, really.
Yeah. Oh, it's so valuable. I urge anyone out there who's even considering, just do it. Just even go to your local beach break, drive your truck up on the sand and set up your video camera on the, film yourself if you have to. If you can't find a friend to do it.
So, what are they called? The solo cams.
The solo cam, there you go.
Yeah.
Solo shot.
Solo shot, that's the one. A lot of people use them here in New Zealand because we have a lot of uncrowded beaches where they literally drive their truck onto the sand and set it up. And it's not like a busy beach where someone can just rock up and steal it while you're out in the water. So, or you can just put your girlfriend next to it. She doesn't have to film. She can just lay there and sunbathe, and it's going to get all your footage. And they're pretty affordable now, so it's a good option.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. But before you go, I want to ask you 4 quick questions. Your favorite 4. What's your favorite board?
I will say the sponsor I ride for. It's a New Zealand shaper, so I know that a lot of people won't know of him. His name's Peter Anderson, but any New Zealander listening, Peter Anderson does a model called the DeVito, and it comes in epoxy. And for myself, being an 80 kg adult, it is designed for that sort of 0 to 3 foot when it's marginal, and it's changed my life because prior to that, we used to try and ride 6.0s, when I was doing the WQS, actually, we used to ride just terrible boards for the equipment because before we got educated around it. So that would be my first and foremost. Otherwise, talking internationally, the DHD DX1 would have to be one of the best all-round surfboards I've ever surfed.
What's your favorite surfing vid?
Oh, raw irons.
And your favorite surfer?
Oh, that's the hard one. Right now, Mick Fanning.
Yeah, okay. And goofy footer?
Rob Machado.
Nice. Good call. Okay, and last one, your favorite pre-surf song or album?
It's Eminem, because he's so angry in his rapping, but it gets me hyped up. And yeah, that's always been the best formula for me, not to chill out, but to get hyped up.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for the interview, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in to the Surf Mastery Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Michael Frampton. Make sure you subscribe so you can keep up to date with the latest interviews. Please share with your friends. Check us out on Facebook at Surf Mastery Surf. And if you're on iTunes, please go and give us a little rating. That'd be awesome. Until next time, keep surfing.